Discovery posted a 20% increase in headline earnings per share to 1.1 billion rand. New business increased by 21% to 4.54 billion rand. The company said the results reflected a continuation of the group's strategy to make a profound impact on the lives it served and to bring about positive societal change. The group declared an interim dividend of 50 cents per share. Gentlemen, welcome to the program. Thanks so much for joining us. Paolo, let's start off with you. A fantastic set of results and really difficult to actually pinpoint any challenges. Let's touch on Protect that we saw actually returning to a profit after a loss. One of the star performers, the company says.
Yeah, so that's absolutely a star performer, because going back in time, everyone was a little worried about Discovery and their international operations, specifically because of the US history. Yeah. So it's very pleasing to see that this now, given what is potentially a weak UK market, having gained traction and returned to profitability. But important to stress that Discovery is breaking their business down into established and emerging businesses. Yeah. That all of the businesses in that emerging category have done exceptionally well.
Actually, we're looking at the developing businesses, PruHealth, PruProtect, Discovery Invest, all 1 billion rand coming through in new business and combined profit of 243 million rand.
And Discovery Invest is really very young. It's only got 20 billion rand under management, and so that puts it as a fairly small player, but nonetheless contributing over 80 million rands to profit. So a significantly profitable business with lots of potential going forward.
So Liston, over to you now. Looking at Discovery Insure, also relatively new business, and since inception, coming through at 140 million rand in premium income. This is only in a few months that they've actually managed to do this, and it's a combination of new business, but predominantly focused on existing customers and consumers that are actually cross-pollinating into the new product line.
Well, I think that's exactly right. They're using the power of the brand as the first step. And secondly, they're saying if people want life insurance, if people want investment, and if people want article insurance, then, they're our prime targets. And, they're all available. We've got their database. So certainly expanding from within. I think that's all very powerful. But I think the other part that really does appeal, and as you mentioned, it was a concern, I guess, to a lot of us, because many South African companies have not made a success of going overseas. They're in the UK, they're in America, and they're now in China. But I think the secret of what they have been doing there is to say, we have the technology, you have the base. Yeah. It would take you a long time to get to our technology, but it's available now. Let's go in the form of a joint venture. So Prudential in the UK, Humana in the United States, and Ping An in China. And I just think that one way or the other, something that is as replicable as what they have is very powerful. The jury is still out as to what happens under different jurisdictions, but certainly they're appealing to the same kind of target market no matter where they are.
And Paolo, the truth is, when you look at what you're seeing coming through in the UK, Discovery actually has the view that it's going to now implement what we see here in South Africa and push it through into the international market space. Do you think that it can actually be done, that it can work in that space?
I think it absolutely can. It's going to leverage off its lessons in South Africa, the way it's built its business here. You see it's quite unique in the South African sense that they are retaining a lot of earnings and pushing it back into new greenfield projects. I think in the UK they've created the base, and it's all about the leveraging of a client base into multiple product lines. And so once they've created sufficient size within that UK operation, they can start to latch on Operation 2, Operation 3 and grow those businesses there. So I think they're in for a fair chance. Of course, early days, but with a fair chance. And even in the South African context, there's still more growth. It's not just about the UK and the US. South Africa in itself still offers many opportunities.
Listen, let's touch on intellectual property. We're starting to see Discovery expanding quite significantly. Is there a concern at any point that competition could heat up in the international market space if we see other companies coming in with a very similar product if they don't secure licensing when it comes to IP?
Yeah, well, there's always that danger in business. If you have a winning model, other people say, well, what are they doing right? And can't we do that too? And can't we do it cheaper? And haven't we got a bigger base? At which point you do start to get a bit of attack on the market. But certainly from what we can see, and this honestly does apply internationally as well, is they've put themselves in a fairly unique position, and they haven't been that high profile as yet, certainly, that I hear, you know, other people saying, gee, they really are doing it right, and they really are making an awful lot of money out of it, and we have to be there. So far, so good. And again, once you've established your position in the marketplace, others have to come at you.
Listen, looking at Ping An Health, we're looking at 1.8 million unique members that have come through. We've also seen quite a significant rise on the new business front. Is China one of the spaces that Discovery will be able to actually gain traction? Because obviously when you look at the population density there relative to what we see here or even the UK, there's a lot of growth prospects that's in store.
Yeah, I do think the model will have to change somewhat, but as I said, they are certainly looking at you know, some idea, as in Vitality, where people actually change their lifestyles. Now, certainly I think there's a good scope for that, and you know, whatever name you want to call it by, you know, aspirational movement alone. But 1.8 million, that could go to 180 million. I'm sorry, but if you look at the number of cell phone users in China, it's a terrific number. And I'm not saying that they have necessarily the geographic locations and all the rest to be able to implement this immediately, but I can certainly see that over time that could end up being by far the largest portion of this business.
Paolo, given the fact that we might actually see a few challenges, you were talking about South African market and we still actually have a bit of growth going forward, but NHI, people are worried now from national health insurance. It got a mention in the national budget. Is there a concern there? And do you think that growth perhaps in a region such as China could counteract any negativity that could come through from this region?
It may well do, but I think, you know, the Chinese story is also quite a long-term story. I think it'll take time before that gets to the critical sizes that it needs to. For example, the South African operation. The opportunity in South Africa from the national health, of course, is that Discovery may well be a player in terms of administering in that system. So it may not all be that negative. They might, potentially, they are one of the beneficiaries in terms of administering and assisting out in that program. So they're probably well positioned. Not only are they well positioned in that space, they're well positioned in the South African context from competition in their various business lines. Because not everyone can connect various business lines through, for example, a Vitality. So there's something that the glue that's holding all these parts together and convinces a client to stay with them on multiple product lines.
So Liston, looking at the overall emerging market space, because it's quite interesting when you see what Discovery is doing. Yes, it's going into China, but it's still predominantly focused on the developed world. Do you think that it's going to start looking at a foray into emerging markets, or do you think that it is looking for that sophisticated market so that it does profit from the developed market scenario that would be playing out on the health front?
Yes, I do. But what I'm saying again, and it's part of what their philosophical statement. You know, they're saying there is a place, you know, in society for private health and private hospitals and so on. Now that's very much a South African situation, and they've adapted that, you know, elsewhere. But the fundamental process is to actually get people to think differently, behave differently. And you're talking to a sophisticated target market, and then you leverage off that onto other products. So I think, by and large, it's a winning strategy, and it ought to work in most countries where there is an ability for people to afford it.
For now, listen, a lot of the health insurers are actually saying that the NHI is not going to pose challenges. They think that it actually could benefit the market. Do you think that this is the case, or do you think at this point they're just waiting to hear some of the detail?
I think obviously we're waiting for the details, but we've been waiting an awfully long time. I mean, that's been a moving horizon for as long as I can remember. And I was very astonished to see in the budget that they're saying that the implementation time frame is up to 14 years. So I certainly am not trembling in my boots right now. Yes, they are starting with 2 pilot survey areas in KwaZulu-Natal next year. But they've budgeted very little money for that. So that tells me they're going to start this very, very low key. Yeah. And again, I think it's as in all things, you know, it will be evolutionary. We can't even begin to guess what it's going to look like in 2020 because we haven't seen the way people react to it, and the outturns, and then the possible industry responses. So softly, and it is a concern if you're in that industry. It has to be, because you're saying, I can't even work on a 5-year plan because I really don't know what the landscape's going to look like in 5 years' time.
Hot or not for you, Paolo?
For us, longer term, exceptionally hot. We we're very strong on this counter.
Okay, any specific price target? You're talking long term here?
No, long term. I think at these levels you can still accumulate. Going forward, I think they're growing internationally. The South African story still has a long way to grow. We definitely would see long-term value in the counter at current levels.
Liston, hot or not? Discovery?
No, it's hot for me too.